Hello, and welcome to another Silver Screen Filmmakers Club workshop. We are glad you are joining us today. The information provided to you today is brought to you by the Stage Incubator, along with our sponsor, the Indiana Arts Commission. This is also brought to you in partnership with the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence at Indiana University Northwest and Folk Art, the Volunteers Office for Community Accessibility Resources and Training. All right, Silver Screen filmmakers. Well, I know you have had some opportunity to be able to go through our other videos. So let's jump right in. We're going to cover in this lesson all about color theory and design. Of course, this is part of our Module 4 lessons, and our key component for this week is all about color. So we're going to delve into the fascinating world of color theory and design. I want to thank you for taking some time out to fully enrich yourself as well as join me on this journey. Thank you for joining me. My name is Gretchen Sip, and I am your facilitator as we learn all there is to know about, of course, the introduction to basic Canva, but also composing our film poster in Canva, utilizing Canva. So let's jump right in. Of course, these lessons are all a part of our week 4 agenda. So this is all about color theory and poster design. For our lesson today, we're going to number one cover a very basic sort of overview or intro to color theory. Then number two, we're going to talk a little bit about the psychological effects of colors. And then lastly, how to create effective color schemes. Now, I do have a cheat sheet of sorts that sort of goes through and itemizes some of the colors and their psychological effects, and that will be put inside of our Moodle classroom as to make it available for you to be able to reference. So, are you ready to get started? Well, welcome to week 4, color theory and poster design. Today, we're going to focus on the basics of color theory and how to apply it to create effective color schemes for movie posters. So let's talk a little bit about color theory. Now, color theory is the study of colors and their interactions. It's crucial in design as it helps convey mood, emotion, and message. So, part of the importance of color theory is that it helps, us as we design, it helps us understand the principles of color interaction and how to use them effectively in our work. Color theory is utilized in various fields from design, like we're doing, but not only that, art, and definitely, marketing and placement. So let's talk a little bit more about the importance of it. Now, color theory is a body of practical guidance. So color theory is about the practicality of utilizing colors, mixing those colors, and then the visual effects of certain color combinations. Now, this is crucial in design because color, number one, affects mood. So, color has a direct impact on mood. Secondly, perception. Based off of, how a color is perceived, can affect how people interact with it and their response to it. And lastly, the overall aesthetic appeal. It also enhances the visual appeal and effectiveness of design. So in this session, what we'll cover, the color wheel. We'll cover color relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about temperature of color, psychology or psychological effects of color, and then discuss just briefly the cultural considerations and how to create color schemes. So, I wanted to just give you sort of a high level overview. Part of what we will talk about when it comes to even creating those effective color schemes is the techniques for selecting and combining colors and even analyzing colors and what their impact is. Again, as I mentioned, I will have a cheat sheet that will be available in our Moodle cloud for you to be able to download that will give you more information regarding, color theory. I also have a cheat sheet that will provide you with some useful websites that I have used quite often, um, that help you to develop color palettes for whatever you're working on. And when I say a color palette, it's basically sort of, you think of when you see painters, they have that tool that they mix colors on and they create the colors that they need for their painting. And essentially, that's what a color palette is, but just digitally for a graphic design. And I use a number of different tools that help me to create amazing color palettes that mix colors very well and help me to, sort of take that thinking process away, take the burden of that thinking process away for me. So let's jump in. Number one, we have our color wheel. Now, the color wheel is a visual representation of colors arranged according to their chromatic relationship. Now, it dates back to Sir Isaac Newton's experiments back in 1666 when he was playing when he was dealing with the prisms. So that's how far back the color wheel goes. And when you think of a prism, even sometimes I think of a rainbow and how it has the different hues. That is essentially what this color wheel comes out of. Now, later after that, the color wheel, of course, was with Sir Isaac Newton, and then later it was expanded upon by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. So the color wheel has definitely gone through some evolutions. Now, on the wheel, we have primary colors like red, blue, and yellow. And these can't be made by mixing other colors. Those are our primaries: red, blue, yellow. Excuse me. And then we have our secondary colors. And those secondary colors are green, orange, and purple. Now, these are made by mixing actually the primary colors. And then we have our tertiary. And our tertiary colors are combinations of primary and secondary colors. Now, a key to note is that the primary colors, those are the building blocks. Those are the building blocks of color theory. And they're the foundation for all of the other colors, i.e., primary, right? Then our secondary colors, of course, are made by mixing those primary colors. So each level builds upon the other. Now, understanding color relationships, or, they're also referred to as color harmonies, that helps us to create visually appealing designs. And we have a few color relationships that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about complementary, analogous, triadic, and split complementary. We're going to discuss all of these. All right. So this is just a sort of quick snapshot, sort of outlining all of this. I thought this was a great, visual to talk about. Number one, we even have some of our color scales and things of that nature. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about the items on the left side, RGB and CMYK. So RGB, those go into what formulates those colors. They're tiny dots of light that blend together to form images, and the more color that's added, the lighter the image. But those, sometimes those look familiar. Part of it is because even when you think about when people used to print, and I have a printer at home, the ink cartridges, you have to, maintain certain cartridges, and those colors then blend together to create, the ink that actually goes on our paper. So those definitely familiar. Then you have your grayscale, your monochromatic, which is the intensity of colors within a single hue. Then we have our warm colors, which we'll talk about, our cool colors, and then our analog. Analog. I have a hard time saying the word analogous. That's our colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Complementary, which are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. Triadic, which are the three colors spaced equally apart on the color wheel, and then our split complementary, which is our color and the two colors next to its complement on the color wheel. So all very fun, but very important. So let's look at our complementary. So these colors are opposite each other on the wheel. So like red and green or blue and orange. What you want to think about is high contrast. So if you have red, opposite it is green. If you have blue, opposite is orange. If you have blue violet, opposite is yellow orange. If you have violet, opposite is yellow. Okay, so those colors that are completely opposite each other on that color wheel. And those usually create the highest contrast and really a vibrant look. All right. Another color relationship is analog analogous colors, that those colors are those that are next to each other. So we're looking at like blue or blue green and green. They provide a harmonious look, and they're very often, more than not, very pleasing to the eye. And part of this is because they're often found in nature. So if you have blue, and then if we look at our wheel here, blue green, and then if we look at those just because they are sort of right next to each other, they create a more harmonious look. So even when you look at red orange, it does the same. It does the same. And part of it is, like mentioned, it's because they often are found in nature. All right, now we have our triadic colors. Now, triadic colors are evenly spaced, such as red, yellow, and blue, and they give a very vibrant effect. Now, these colors are often evenly spaced around the color wheel, and they create balance and they create vibrancy. So, if you look at our diagrams here, let's start with the top left. It's red, yellow, and blue, and they're evenly spaced. As you see, it's three colors in between each one. They're evenly spaced, so they create that balance. When you have green, orange, and purple, does the same thing. Yellow, green, blue, violet, and red, orange. So they all follow that sort of same suit of three colors in between, and that creates that balance and that vibrancy. And then lastly, we'll talk about split complementary. So we have a base color and then two adjacent to its complementary color. Now, split complementary colors involve a base color and the two colors adjacent to its complementary color. And these color schemes are often offer a balanced contrast. These usually create high contrast without the tension of a complementary scheme. Okay, so they're a little bit softer on the eye, but yet provide that same basis of high contrast. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about temperature. Now, colors are often described as warm or as cool. You have warm colors, and those warm colors they invoke that mood of warmth, energy, vibrancy, while cool colors can invoke calm and tranquility. And sometimes, though, those cooler colors can also evoke feelings of depression or of sadness, and even more of a serious note. So it's important when you're choosing your colors that you take into account the temperature of the colors because the temperature can affect and influence the mood and the feeling of the design. As you see by a diagram, the warmer colors are more to the left, thus usually dealing with our yellows, our oranges, and our reds, and even our red violet. Our cooler colors are that violet to blue and the blue to green, and then the green to a yellow green. So those are more of our cooler colors. Now, colors can also, you know, be thought about when you think about the colors. You want to consider number one our primaries. So, like I said, now we know our primary colors is red, green, blue. Those are the base. Now, green and blue exist in that cooler color option, and then the red, of course, exists in the warmer color. But keep that in mind as we go into how color can affect our visuals. Now, warm colors, they tend to be more stimulating and energetic, and they can often evoke feelings of warmth and of comfort, love, intensity, things of that nature. While cooling colors, our blues, our greens, they can have a calming effect, they can have a soothing effect, and often they're associated with tranquility and even professionalism. So, we talked a little bit about how they make people feel. Let's dive a little bit more into that. We have our psychological effects of color. Now, color can evoke specific emotions and behaviors. For example, red. Red can simplify energy or signify energy and passion, while blue, on the other hand, can be calming or trustworthy. And then if we see yellow, yellow often represents happiness and warmth. So if we want to understand these effects, that will help us to understand and make more informed choices about our color mixes, about how we choose to set up our color palette for our design, and make sure that it aligns with our intended message for our short films. As you see here, I did choose an example of Blade Runner that, it mixes complementary colors. So it's complete opposite colors. And essentially that falls in line with the concept for that movie because we are dealing with opposites here. Let's look at, some more about our psychological effects. So, red is often used in warnings or to grab attention, sometimes call to action. Blue is often common in corporate designs, for its association with trustworthiness, like I've mentioned before, blue is associated sometimes with law enforcement. Definitely government entities use blue. Um, Blue is one of those colors, especially all depending on the hue, where those that see it begin, it invokes that feeling of trust. And then green is often associated with nature and health. Now, we have another lesson that is all about the types of moods for film and associated colors. So, that lesson goes a little bit further down into how colors really impact and what each individual color can mean. And then again, look out for that cheat sheet that goes into the psychological colors, psychology of colors deeply. That will help you as you create your color palettes. So, high level overview, we know how things can impact. We know how colors can impact the mood and what we're trying to convey. Let's look at how culture and color coincides. Now, when you're using or utilizing color, you want to keep in mind the cultural considerations because colors can have different meanings in various cultures. And there are tons of text on this very subject. One of the first books actually that I had to purchase when I jumped into the world of graphic design, especially when it came to creating graphic design or designs for marketing with corporate and corporations, was a book all about how color is perceived in various cultures. And I worked at the time for a company that was affiliated with Japanese. In fact, it was a Japanese company that was over here in the states. They had, another branch off here in the states, and I learned very quickly how different colors imply different meanings. And so, all depending on who your audience is, you want to be mindful of that as well, or even the context of your film. You want to be mindful of that. So, like for instance, red. Red is seen as lucky in Chinese culture. If you go to the boat or any casino and you see those of, Asian descent that are part of the Chinese culture, a lot of times they're wearing red when you see them. And that is just something that you just know. They look at that as lucky. But in Western cultures, red can, be you seen as a warning or, seen as, alert, urgent. Now, in South Africa, red is associated with mourning. Isn't that very vast in difference in definition of how it impacts different cultures? That's why it's essential to consider your cultural context when designing for a global audience. So it's one thing when you're designing for us, your local neighborhood, your family, your kids, but just to keep in mind, if you're designing for a global audience, cultural differences in color, it's important to consider it. You know, just to give you a few more examples, white. In Western culture, white represents purity, but in Eastern cultures, white represents mourning. It represents mourning, and black. Black in Western cultures, some Western cultures, it symbolizes or signifies elegance and sophistication. But in some Eastern cultures, it can symbolize evil. So these are all, just pieces that you want to take in mind as you are choosing your color palette. So, part of how you will create effective color schemes is really applying some basic principles. And now, we've talked about these principles before when it just comes to the basics of graphic design. But I want to just remind you of a few things and let's talk about it. Creating effective color schemes involve balancing, it involves contrast and harmony, all while considering the context and the audience. When you have, that well thought out color scheme and you think about those things as well as cultural sensitivity, it can enhance the overall design. We talk about color harmonies. For example, here in this example, this is the Disney Aladdin one with Will Smith as the genie, and the triadic colors here are used. So it's a color harmony that's being used. Now, there are a number of tools that you can use to create color schemes. This is what I was talking about. And I do have a cheat sheet that it will be available in our Moodle that covers these, has the links for you to be able to use. When I tell you this has saved me a plethora of, could save me considerable amount of time because it can be very time consuming to really generate some really good, amazing color schemes. But there are some tools available online that help you generate these color schemes, and those include Canva itself. Canva has a color generator. There's also another website called Coolers and also Color Hunt. Now, these tools they assist in experimenting and create a cohesive coloring scheme. So, you'll look out for that cheat sheet. It says websites to create color palettes, and that will be available to you in Moodle. All right. Now, as you utilize some of those websites to help you generate some color palettes, you also want to think about when you're selecting the colors and combining the colors that you could draw inspiration from anything. You could draw it from nature, you could draw it from art, and even fashion. Now, online tools can definitely help you find complementary and harmonious combinations. But just at a basic level, there are some practical tips that you can use. One being you start with the base color and then you build around it. Start with base, build around it. And then consider contrast and readability. And then from there, you test the scheme in various contexts to make sure that there is no clashing, it's accessible, and it's readable. Always a rule of thumb for me, use as limited number of colors to maintain that coherence, and always test for readability and accessibility. So you don't want to, even though it may seem, quite, intriguing to be able to utilize a number of colors and use as many as you want, it's best to use a limited number of colors because you want to make sure that, I've talked about this before, ADA compliance. Even with this example here of Superman, the base really is the blue. And then we build upon that to make sure that the contrast is there, but the readability and accessibility still exists. So let's examine a few movie posters that, have, some great colors and principles applied to them. And we'll look at why certain color choices were made and the impact that they have on the viewer. So here we have the Grand Budapest Hotel. Now, this is more of a pastel color scheme. We have a pink and we have some green. We have a little bit of yellow. But automatically, when you think of that pink, when you see that pink in there, that pastel color scheme, pastels a lot of times evoke a sense of nostalgia and whimsy. And essentially, that goes along with the theme of the movie. So they consider that when designing this film poster. Now let's look at another one. Mad Max. Mad Max Fury Road. This is very fiery. You know, it looks gold, but it's actually a red. It's just the hue of red and the mix of the color combinations. Now, again, when you look at Mad Max, you think, of course, drama, you think energy, you drink chaos, and it's because of the fiery hues of the red and yellow that are being utilized here. So that was just a few examples of how we can utilize color and see it when it comes to our film. So, hey, we've gotten through our lesson all about color theory. To recap, understanding and applying color theory is crucial in design. Now, color influences mood and perception and the actual overall effectiveness of your design. So, applying color theory enhances the visual appeal and communication of your design, and it helps to create a strong emotional connection with your audience. And that is so important. That is so important. And the key is it's important because that makes your work more important or impactful. Because you're utilizing this short film to tell a story. And so with utilizing color theory in an effective way, it helps to tell that story and make it more memorable. Well, as we, always ask you, think about how you can incorporate what you learned in color theory into how you're designing your movie poster and your future designs. If you have any questions, like we always say, let us know. Shoot us an email, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. Well, I want to thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking some time to invest in yourself. We appreciate you as we learn more about each lesson. We're building on top of each element until we get to the finish line. But we are so thankful that you decided to join us. And until next time, happy creating. Well, I hope you learned a lot. Thank you for joining the Stage Incubator and viewing a part of our digital literacy series. We really appreciate you being here and thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at thestageincubator@gmail.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Again, we want to thank our sponsors and our partners, the Indiana Arts Commission, the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence, and VOCART, the Volunteers Office for Community Accessibility, Resource, and Training. We hope to see you at our next session, and stay tuned for more things to come.